Hey, so how'd everyone's watermelons do this year? It's the end of the season and just doing a check-in because mine didn't do that well. We put them in a new raised bed this year and it was good garden soil, but it was on top of some clay and I worked it a little bit, but clearly not enough. And yeah, they didn't do so well. The vines produced and there were some melons at the end, but it was not what I remember from childhood, not the nice sweet ones that you like. So I decided I wasn't having that happen again. Watermelon's my favorite fruit, so I put together a little guide on how to do it better next time and wanted to share that with you all because I'm hoping you all enjoy watermelon as much as I do. So the first thing you got to do is pick the right spot and pick the right variety. So watermelon roots do like to go deep, so make sure you've got a space that's can be well worked. And then you've got a couple different options: bush ones, which are more compact, or vining ones, which spread everywhere. So it just depends on your space and how far you can let those vines run, which you should pick. So I have a little table here of some different choices. They've all got some pros and cons. Sugar Baby is personally my favorite, but I like my watermelon sweet. There are some other options in here. Yellow Doll is kind of cool. That one, it's a quick one and it's yellow fleshed, so it's kind of nice because it's got a little novelty to it. Um, I would always pick a couple varieties so that way you've got an early harvest and a late harvest and you can have watermelon for a longer period of time because you don't really want to just have it for one variety's maturity. You want to have it for a few months. So how do you get the soil ready for your watermelon planting? Like, this is for next year obviously, but you're going to work the soil deep. Their roots aren't like other vegetables in shallow. They go down 12 to 18 inches. So work the soil deep and then put good compost on top. They like a lot of nutrients, especially early on in the growing process. And then they do like the soil a little bit more acidic than other vegetables. So we're going to go ahead and aim for a pH of 6 to 6.5, 6.8 at the high end. And then you're going to watch your watermelon grow. You'll start with a seedling. It'll produce some vines and then some flowers and finally, hopefully, a nice, delicious fruit. Um, Watermelon are picky in terms of they want warm soil. So don't plant them too early thinking, oh, I'm going to get my watermelon early. That's not what will happen. You'll have plants that grow really slow. Their roots will not process moisture appropriately and be susceptible to fungus. So what you really want to do is wait until the soil is at least 70 degrees and actually closer to 80 degrees to plant them for your best results. Usually that's towards the end of May, beginning of June, but you can also get a soil thermometer to test it out if you want to be like on the leading edge and get them in as soon as possible. Direct sowing is always the best way to go. When you buy them in pots, yeah, you've got a head start and it is nice. The seedling stage is one of the most susceptible stages where they'll get die or get killed off. So there are benefits to buying potted plants, but there's going to be a stunted component to that too, because when you take them from that soil and put them in your soil, it's going to be a temperature change, and the roots also have to go from being root bound to not root bound anymore. So there are trade-offs. So I would always recommend sowing them directly into the soil. Put them in mounds. That way, that part of the soil, it warms up quicker. Essentially, you're going to get that early growth sooner. So mound the soil. It also helps it drain because watermelon like a lot of water. It's in their name. So they like a lot of water, but the top of the plant and the roots there don't really like, they want to dry out a little bit too. So that's where the mounding helps in the irrigation component as well. If you want to try and gain a little bit, you can put hot caps on them and that will warm the soil quicker, and you just got to remember to remove them once they outgrow it. Take them off once the nights are above 65 degrees. So when you're planting them, the bush watermelons, like I said, don't take up nearly as much space. So you can put them 3 feet apart and 3 feet between rows. But for the other vining watermelons, you want to plant them 5 to 6 feet between hills and then 6 to 8 feet between rows. And when you say hill, what you want to do is mound up that area, maybe 8 to 10 inches higher than the rest of the ground. And you're going to put 5, 6 seeds in there, and then you'll thin them to the one or two best melons from what come up. Consistent water is one of the best things for watermelon plants. I would recommend some sort of irrigation, whether that's drip irrigation, soaker hose, or sprinkler. Drip irrigation and soaker hoses are better because watermelon leaves can be picky and they don't like getting wet. So it will keep fungal and other disease pressures down if you go ahead and use a soaker hose or a drip irrigation kit. That's where we messed up this year. We just sprayed water on the leaves and it really kind of stunted the leaves a lot. So that's something we'll be doing next year. Another interesting thing about watermelon that I learned was fertilizer. They do like a lot of nitrogen, especially early on, and it helps the vines grow a lot. But then once the fruit starts to set, you want to cut back on the nitrogen because too much nitrogen will push more vine growth and leafy growth, and you won't get as many melons. So it's better to actually switch to a fertilizer that's higher in phosphorus and potassium as the watermelon grow to help the fruit size up. And then less nitrogen also concentrates sugars into the watermelon too, instead of going into that leafy growth. So that's another benefit to make the melon sweeter, is to take away some of that nitrogen. Watermelon are susceptible to pests. They're not the most susceptible, but they still can get cucumber beetles, aphids, and squash vine borers, all of which will do a lot of damage to the plants. So use some neem oil if you're seeing aphids. Cucumber beetles, you can spray them with insecticidal soap. And then the squash vine borers, those are a pretty terrible one. They're usually worse on pumpkins and squash. So if you're not seeing them on those, your watermelon are probably safe, but if you do see it, you can cut into the vine, pull out the grub, and then put dirt over that part of the vine, and usually it will re-root itself to help save the plant. As far as diseases go, powdery mildew is one, and that's where keeping the leaves dry helps keep that away. Fusarium wilt and gummy stem blight are both soil-borne diseases, so rotating your crops is a good way to keep those out. And then leaf spot and cankers is really where you're just not getting enough airflow. If that's a real big problem for you, you can try trellising your watermelons. The stems are pretty strong, but they won't hold up naturally, so you'll have to secure them. But that is one way to improve airflow. How do you know when your watermelon is ripe? So you spent all this time, you did a good job, you kept the pests and disease away, and now it's time to know if your watermelon is ripe. The worst thing to do is to pick it too early because they're not like a tomato. They're not going to ripen off the vine. When you pick it, that's the sweetest it's ever going to be. So how do you know if it's ready? The best way to tell is there's a little green tendril that comes right out of the watermelon, right next to the stem. And that there, when it's dry and dead, the watermelon is done growing. Another way is you can flip it over to the ground spot, and you can look at that, and you want it to be yellow. The more yellow it is, the better it is. The paler and whiter it is, it's still growing. You can also thump it. That's a less reliable test, but a dull hollow sound or deep hollow sound is going to be indicating that it's ready. If you've got some problems with your watermelon growing, this year ours were small and didn't really have a lot of flavor, and it was just the bad soil. But here were some other problems that I saw coming up when I was doing this research. One was splitting fruit, and that's what happens if there's like a drought and then you give them a lot of water afterwards. Essentially, the inside, the water component grows quicker than the rind does, and it cracks. If you've got few fruits, that can be a pollination issue. So You can hand pollinate or plant bee-friendly flowers to help encourage them to come around. Yellowing leaves could be waterlogged soil or not getting enough nutrients, phosphorus and potassium. And then if the vines look healthy but the fruit's not very sweet, you might have just given too much nitrogen. So I mentioned if you've got a lot of flowers but not a lot of fruit, it could be a pollinator issue. So bees are on the decline, and that's not good. But one way you can help lessen the impacts to your patch is to hand pollinate. So male flowers grow on a longer, thinner stem, and they're the first ones to blossom. And then the female flowers have a shorter stem, and they have a tiny little melon at the base of it. So what you can do is you can pick a male flower early in the morning. The best time is between 7 and 10 a.m. And you can peel back the petals of that, exposing the anther of the male flower. And you can go to the female flowers and rub it against it, essentially self-pollinating. You're going to want to do this with several of them, thinking 4 or 5, because complete pollination is what helps the fruit set. So you're going to want to do this several times. And it's really important to do because really the blossoms are open for only one morning. And by midday, they begin to wilt. So that first day is the best day to do it. And it's just important to do it if you want a fuller harvest. The bees will get some, but they're just not able to contribute the way they have in the past because of insecticidal use. And being organic in your garden is a good way to help mitigate this even more on your land. It's just an unfortunate side effect of our big ag conglomeration that we've got this decline in our pollinators. At the end of the guide, I go over a few more frequently asked questions, so you can go ahead and take a look. One of the biggest things that I took from this was the soil temperature. I did not realize they wanted to be so warm. So when I plant next year, I'm either going to put hot camps on or just make sure I wait until later in the season, because I definitely planted mine too soon this year, in addition to not working that soil well enough. So take a look at the full blog post. It's really helpful. I learned a lot from it, and watermelon's my favorite fruit, so I'm hoping I don't have any issues ever again. Have a good one, everyone.